Welcome, everyone, to this business as usual webcast for today, Wednesday, the 20th of May. Michael is saying, I do not know how to do any of those tasks. No worries. We're going to talk about how to learn to perform some of those tasks today. There is no shame in not knowing how to do something. That is the primary message of this presentation, I think. We're joined today by my new co-host, Sharon Elmore. Landon is out today. Landon had an event at HCBA. Sharon, why don't you tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself quickly?
Well, I'm attorney, been one for many decades. I've been at the Bar Association for 13 years, mostly with the Ramsey County Bar Association, but now with all three, and enjoying working with Mike and the other MSBA folks and HCBA folks. I have a rather eclectic background before joining the Bar Association. Some practice, not private practice. I worked for a prepaid legal plan for the auto workers here in town for a bit. And I've also worked in the nonprofit arena, worked for legal services. And I also worked did Mike at Thompson, but actually before it was Thompson, when it was West Publishing. So happy to join you last minute. And thanks, that's basically it.
Thanks, Sharon. Nice to have you with us. Joe, we have Joe Colucci from Procertas, makers of tech assessment. Joe, before we talk about the LTA, why don't you tell us first who you are and a little bit about what you're about?
Hey, thanks. And thanks for having me. My name is Joe Colucci. I'm not an attorney. I have a partner who is. We kind of met in the scope of me unsuccessfully selling him eDiscovery, which we could talk about. But we are headquartered out of Charleston, South Carolina, but you will not hear any Southern twang from me. I am, although 10 years here, I am a New Yorker, as you could probably tell by accent and last name in Colucci. But so I, when Sharon says eclectic background, I could probably topple that. I've done it all. I started actually in legal as a paralegal in New York City out of college, but ventured through my career as owning bar restaurants in New York City, high school teacher for 3 years. And then I got into sales, primarily eDiscovery, management review and computer forensic services, which I still do today as we continue to build out Procertas. But that is how I met my partner. My partner is Casey Flaherty. You may have heard his name before. I made some news a while back with this legal tech assessment. Since commercialized for your use, he's currently the head of innovation over at Baker McKenzie. So he is an attorney and whatnot. We complement each other well. But yeah, I'm happy to be here and look forward to talking a bit about the legal tech space and the legal technology assessment and how it fits in.
Great. So, by way of introduction, we connected at the MSBA with folks from Procertas back in 2016. We were familiar with the backstory of Casey Flaherty's experience at Kia Motors, which I think is a great background story. And we worked with Procertas to build a Minnesota version of that. Joe, I wonder if you might give us a little background as how Procertas came to be, and
Sure.
What it is, what it does.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell the story so many times a day that I could probably tell it pretty well. But so as I mentioned, my partner's name is Casey Flaherty, and Casey is an attorney. He graduated from USC Gold out in Southern California. When he graduated, he went into Holland and Knight as an associate. And when he walked through the door, partners X, Y, and Z started tasking him with document creation, document formatting, working in Excel, PowerPoint. The assumption was he's young, he's a college graduate, he's technology proficient. It couldn't have been the worst assumption ever. It's that whole myth of the digital native, right? Born with a Twitter account in utero, so they're technically savvy. It's wrong. Right? It's wrong. We're in almost 100 law schools right now. We have the data to prove it. That said, Casey, being Casey, went out to YouTube and Google where you could find all this training and find very good training videos. And he learned it because he saw this is what he was going to be doing in his daily practice. But he did watch his fellow associates survive through using these technologies with brunt force. His days went seamless. Theirs didn't. Fast forward 3 years, Casey went in-house to Kia, the car company out in Southern California, as a managing counsel there. And now he was on the other side of the spectrum, and he was receiving work product from his outside counsel. And he said, wow, this is not just a Holland the Night problem. This is a more grandiose problem in terms of lack of proficiency in leveraging these technologies and people delivering product, legal product and using it as in brunt force, like I mentioned earlier. But all he had was his opinion at the time, and you can't really have a conversation with your opinion. So what he did was he branded his own quote unquote legal technology audit. And what was that? He went out to all of his outside counsel and assessed every which way they touched technology to deliver legal acumen. It could be as extensive as e-discovery all the way to the leveraging of basic office technologies such as Word, Excel, PDF, PowerPoint. And for those facets, those basic office technologies, he set up a manual assessment. And he aggregated the results of that assessment, and he got his proof. He got his proof of how he can have a conversation with outside counsel. And he didn't demand cutting costs or whatnot. He said, hey, we pinpointed the problem here. How do we correct it, right? And the thing was, he'll be the first to tell you he had brilliant attorneys working for him, super attorneys. They just lack these skills, and it's not their fault. You know, you don't learn this in undergraduate. You don't learn it in law school unless you seek it out. We have since changed that at the law school level, and we're working towards the undergraduate with our legal tech assessment platform. So after getting all this information and then it stirring a lot of within the legal market, because he was well written at the time in Legal Tech News, the ACC docket and whatnot, he saw the most interest coming from in those writings was the fact that there could be a way to assess legal professionals' proficiency in these tools. He started having conversations about commercializing, and not commercializing for profit at first. He actually partnered originally with Dean Andy Perlman at a Suffolk Law School in Boston. What they were going to do was take these assessments, right? There was a Word assessment, an Excel and PDF at the forefront, 12 to 15 tasks. It would rate the end user on time and accuracy, going through, downloading a document, doing editing according to instruction. It was always a legal document. And thankfully for me, because they were going to offer this again for free for legal professionals to go in and figure out what they know and what they don't, and then go address what they don't. Free and software development are simply oxymorons. So Suffolk could not really truly support it. Casey and I, as I mentioned earlier in my background, had met a while back of me unsuccessfully selling him e-discovery services while he was at Kia, but we really hit a chord. I got a lot of things in common, and he knew I was helping smaller legal tech startups come to market. So came back to me today, it's not working with Suffolk. Maybe we go for a for-profit model. Would you want to partner? And we did, and we launched our first version of the LTA in February of 2015. And since then, you know, it's transformed from a behind the firewall software into a web-based, which Mike will talk about today. And it's been wonderful. The adoption rate has been great. Primarily, our largest adoption is at the law school level. You know, we're talking upwards of 85 plus schools utilizing the software, and law firms and the Department of Justice and global as well, Royal Dutch Shell. We have a very good footprint in Canada. So the lack of proficiency is not just a legal issue. Legal's low-hanging fruit for us. Casey was an attorney, created it for his, attorneys. You guys, time is a proxy in legal. So when you manipulate these technologies, you are taking more time. But more importantly, by manipulating them, you are creating much more opportunity for error. And that's Mike's been stressing redactions earlier on with some of his questions, and we see what that's going on with that. So, not knowing how to properly redact the document it could cause a problem. Hopefully that was a good kind of segue as who, what, why, but how we are Procertas. Procertas is a play on words, professional certifications, which we took a while to figure out a name. We started as cost control, but that's a negative name. Anything else I could add of color, Mike?
I wanted to ask about, it's exciting that you're in the law schools, actually, I think. I'm not sure that we have maybe the proper incentive to improve on our billable hour and maximizing that hour. With in Casey's case, he was general counsel, so he had some power in requiring his outside counsel. He was looking out for Kia and saying, I want to save them. I think it was like 15% he saved on their legal spend, which is a ton of money. And, the consumer end of the market doesn't necessarily have that sort of same muscle. We offer it here at the Bar Association as because it's just the right thing to do, right? I think it's the reason we wanted to reach out to you was we just feel like, if we're going to be billing by the hour still, that we should be able to maximize and be efficient within that billable hour. But we joke always that this is always the hardest sell for us here at the Bar Association, the legal tech assessment. And earlier while we were chatting in, do you know how to do this? We didn't get a lot of responses because it's not comfortable for attorneys to say, no, I don't know. Yeah. How do we get folks, what are the incentives to get this work done other than it's just the right thing to do?
Sure. Great question. Well, what Casey did when he was at Kia was kind of our premise when we came into the market. We thought many more corporations were going to demand outside counsel do this because we had a success story in Casey. Ton of interest at first, but breaking that relationship with general counsel, a lot of general counsels came from their law firms that they worked at. It's the whole cultural thing, right? Well, this year we're about to make big news. Two mega organizations, one being Royal Dutch Shell and the other being NetApp. They are demanding. So Royal Dutch Shell just went to a panel review and knocked down to 65 firms globally. If you bill from of counsel level, associate, some partners, if they're boutique firms, all the way down to paralegals and whatnot, if they bill time for Royal Dutch Shell, they have to have a qualified or expert rating on the LTA. This is going to be announced within the month or so. NetApp is piggybacking on that, and then now some other organizations are kind of raising their eyes saying, let's see how this works. So now we're going to be able to tell a better story. That said, though, should it take that for any law firm, any size solo practitioner to large to want to be much more efficient? No. Why? It's a portable marketing tool. When you start bidding on work, and a lot of times these days, no matter what size your firm is, a lot of clients are demanding fixed fee for certain things. I know as a business owner, I use large firms to small firms to whatever, and I look at them. I have the power of having an attorney on my team that is whatever. But I say to what's the fixed cost? How many hours do you estimate? All right. Well, yeah, 30. Then we'll charge you at this hour. No, you won't. Like okay, if that's 30, you got to be efficient. You want to make your money, you got to get the project done by that, and it's got to be done well. So I demand that as a small business, and then the big businesses I know are doing that. So it's a way to be agile if that demand comes through. Another thing is we did, funny enough, we did a case study. Our first ever law firm that leveraged it across the board with all their associates was Kiesel Young Logan in California. It was about 78, 81 end users. The first question we asked all the associates during that kind of test case, let's call it, was, do you find it to be potentially beneficial to go through this exercise, right? And the exercise was simply to figure out what they know and then address what they don't know. 100% response, no. It's going to take away their time from billing, blah, blah, blah. So after the whole exercise came back, we re-asked that question, and it was 100%. Oh, we re-asked the question just as was, and it was 100% yes. And then they also said, we said, did you learn at least 1 to 2 things you use in daily practice that has made you more efficient? 100% yes. More importantly, though, when they first did that, the kind of a benchmark assessment, right, figuring out what they know and what they don't know, the associates that performed the strongest on the benchmark without doing the training or whatnot had the highest realization rates in the firm. So they actually got paid for their services prior to going through this exercise. They retained their revenue stronger because they weren't fluffed hours. A lot of clients are saying, hey, take off and the larger corporations, and my colleague can talk about this pretty well. We're going to ask for a 10% cut because we know there's some inefficiencies going on here, and particularly at the associate level and whatnot. This is a way to get in front of that and say, hey, let's say it's a bank you're trying to do work with. It's a high intensive Excel. I'm going to either you as a sole practitioner, small firm, and or a small associate team. I'm going to put 3 Excel experts on this case at the associate level. So they can't come back and say, hey, these people lack the skills that they're working in the data. No, you got it in front of it. So it's much more than saying client X is demanding that you do it. It's going to make your practice more fluid, exchanging documents, and it's going to allow potentially for you to be more agile when you're trying to get business and saying, hey, I could flat fee that because you could get through this pretty quick, but in terms with the documents and whatnot, and it might help you win some business, which at the end of the day, you're a lawyer, but you're selling your expertise and whatnot. So we're all salespeople at the end of the day, right? Just somewhere at a higher level.
Yeah, it's interesting to know that there is a market out there for these services. I wonder if you might talk a little bit about the LTC4 coalition. I'm not super familiar with this, but some of my local colleagues and some of our local attorneys here are LTC4 certified, which is its own version of competence. But my understanding is that this is not competency-based learning here. This is a sort of self-reporting, as it were. Am I correct about that?
Yeah. 100%. So we are actually approved partner of the LTC4, whatever that means. We have trouble translating, but super organization. Mike, like you said, a lot of people, just to get out in front of it, a lot of people look at the LTA and the LTC4 as being competitors, but we're not. That's why I started with the fact that we're an approved partner. And the reason we are an approved provider is because they are not competency-based. They're not promoting competency-based learning. What they're promoting is standards and achieving standards. Now, the problem there is, what do they have to do to achieve such standards? And it's self-reporting, right? And that's like the traditional problem with training. When we go to, or sometimes go to an AmLaw 20, say, we have the best training in the world, right? We have the best training. Oh, what do you use to validate that people actually learn from sitting, however you're doing your training? Oh, they're using time as a proxy. We sat in a room for 2 hours and we went through this Excel, the thing. So the LTC4, although is highly recognized, and some of the firms that are popping up there uses both. It's again a self-reporting standards company as it relates to legal, all the way broad scope to technology and whatnot. We have flirted with creating an LTC4 module to make it more competency-based, right? To more validation. For a long time, the LTC4, unless you were a member, they wouldn't allow you to see the content. So it was impossible for us to create that module. And then moving forward, you couldn't show the content or like a sample test to a potential customer because they weren't a member. So it was a whole conundrum of problems there. But again, a wonderful organization, just different in approach and whatnot. So I can't speak deeply into, how clients look, but any clients are asking for LTC4 accreditation. I don't know. But I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, but interesting to hear you say about Shell coming on board. There is some pressure there from clients to get that in. And I thought it might be interesting. I mean, because I know that some of our local folks are members of this organization as well. And I think I've heard the self-reporting referred to you by your organization as delusions of adequacy. I think is maybe the term of art there. But it's interesting to see that that folks are taking note of and wanting to be able to demonstrate this. The challenge that I've heard from some of the folks I've been talking to locally is at the law school level. And, I've asked our members, wouldn't you be more likely to hire a student who is proficient in these tools? They come on board ready to perform. And some of them have told me, no, we want to do all of that. We want that to be what we do. Our law management associates, our staff will be the persons to train. And so what happens is they watch the activity of their young associates, and when it takes them 3 hours to perform a task that should have taken them 10 minutes to perform, then they identify that as a training opportunity, which is maybe job security for training staff in the law firms, but I'm not sure that's the best mode for the law firm itself.
No, it's funny to hear that, and that's I think you nailed the nail on the head. You hit the nail on the head. Excuse me. Is that there is also this misnomer that the LTA will replace humans on the training side. The LTA we look at it, we strongly promote it as a tool to be used by a training team, whether a large firm, and you probably get a lot of that conversation you just spoke of by large firms. And the tool is simply used, and it can make their training team much more proficient on how they address things, right? You do a benchmark assessment, right? They can do something that will pinpoint. They don't have to watch an associate and all of a sudden say, oh my God, it took them 3 hours to do that, and they're billing the client 3 hours. We got to address that, right? Put them through the benchmark, figure out what they don't know right away, non-billable. They can do this on their own, it's web-based, and say, hey, you know what, here's on the backside, there's training modules that have teach me videos. You take as much time as you want, and then do a validating assessment, showing that you now know how to do what you were just taught that you didn't know. Okay, and then move on. So there is I think what you said, there are some firms out there that hold on for dear life, like we're trying to replace their training, which is simply not the case. And then there are some huge firms that love it. They use it just as if I said. And then we also have a lot of firms using it as an onboarding tool. So whether it's associates, paralegals, whatnot, that whole ominous line item on the resume, right? Proficient in Microsoft Office. Everybody's got it on there, but we always make the joke, what's a bigger fallacy? That statement or I read all the terms and conditions, check. Right?
We have a participant who's asked if we're going to actually demonstrate the LTA, and Mike and I were just chatting offline to do that. So why don't we start? Could we start showing one of the modules and showing how it works?
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I brought it up here. You saw me just log in. I will note that we've got a link in the practice law library for this tool. This actually, I've learned as an old video, and I can tell because it's got the old logo on it. But you can actually, interesting backstory here, we'll share later about how we got CLE approval for these, what really amounts to self-study. But if you access the tool through the practice law library, you'll get the member rate for the legal tech assessment. And you can also apply for credit. Here are the credit codes for each of the modules here. But here's the module. And I'm going to open up the Word, I think, and maybe let Joe walk us through how that works. I'm going to open up the trainer, I think.
Yeah. So the first two screens you're going to see on the trainer are simply the description of how the software works. The trainer is great. So just so you know, the assessments and the trainers are they're replicas in how they function, but the trainer has much more functionality. The assessments are just that. They're tests. They move in a linear fashion, task after task after task. And then once you're done, you're going to get a real-time score report that's based on time and accuracy. And we have beginner, intermediate, qualified, expert. If you get qualified or expert, you actually get a representative micro certification digital badge. It's automated, prompted to you, and something you can put on your LinkedIn profile, your your lawyer profile, if they have them on your law firm side, and or your digital resume. And it's actually a proof of proficiency within these tools. So if somebody on the other end clicked on it, it's going to tell them exactly what you did, what day, what time, and what you did to achieve such micro certification. So very simple. Assessments are just that, tests, linear fashion. You can't navigate back and forth. We actually started with just assessments, and we got the general feedback from our initial users, and they said, hey, we know what we know, and we're just not good at this. How do we get better other than doing this assessment over and over again? Simple answer is to do what my partner did, right? And go to YouTube, go Google it and whatnot. But like Mike referenced earlier, if you don't puncture people's delusions of adequacy, they're not going to do it. They're going to go through their day, leveraging and blunt force. And more importantly, if you don't put the training of how to do it right near where they need to be, and they don't have to search it out, they're not going to do it. So what my partner and I put our heads together and said, hey, we got these awesome assessments. People are reacting to them well, but they're looking for more. They're looking for how to get better. So we replicated the assessment modules and created trainer modules. So the trainer modules does not have a time mechanism within. All right, so it's kind of like a low stakes approach. You can navigate back and forth to certain tasks. They're the ones that you need to address. And it gives you task level feedback where the assessments, you have to wait to the end to figure out which ones you did right or wrong and whatnot. The trainer ones will actually tell you right or wrong. If you do one wrong, it's not only going to tell you that you did wrong, but it's going to tell you what you did wrong. And if you simply don't know what you're doing for that said task, like the track changing and comments on the screen there, you'll click on the yellow button, which is a teach me button. It's going to bring you to a how-to voiceover caption video on how to actually do it. You can absorb this, go back in and address it and validate that you actually learned how to do it correctly. Great. That is the ultimate approach to competency-based learning, right? That was our goal, and we really seem to have hit it. Now, something to note, there's a workflow to the software. It's a legal workflow. You download a document, you're going to enable editing, you edit it according to instruction, you'll save and upload it. So essentially, if one of your corporate clients sends you a document for Redline, you're going to go through that same process. Mike, if you jump back to the modules, I have something that will open eyes. So because there is a workflow, just hit stop. Go to stop on the red. Yeah. And leave. And then go to the module is fine. So you'll see every assessment's backed by a trainer, which I've been talking about. But interestingly enough, there's a tutorial up top. The tutorial simply level sets the end user on how to actually properly use our software, right? Download, edit, save, upload. We didn't have a tutorial in there until we got into the law school space. Why? We got inundated with help desk requests from law students, and they were 95% the same problem. They would say, hey, I downloaded the document, I enabled editing, I edited the document, I saved it, and now I can't find it because they were unaware they had a download folder. All right, that's how deep the lack of knowledge of these basic office technologies, where you're saving documents, goes. So we put the tutorial in there to level set our end users. And as you'll see, every assessment is backed by a trainer. We continue to roll out more content. Our law schools are super awesome partners. We look at them as partners in helping us with content suggestion, actual content. So we started with a Word, an Excel, and a PDF, the three top modules up there. They all work within a generic legal contract. That is the type of document you'll download. And then we started getting say, hey, you know what? For our legal research and writing classes, we could really use a sample brief, a sample memo. So we put those in there. Then PowerPoint's been on high demand from corporate in-house counsel. They seem to use it a ton. So we did that. You'll see your e-filing and Flaherty e-filing. We are now working readily on a few things. On the legal side of things, we're working on Outlook and an e-discovery module. And not e-discovery like how do you use relativity. It's more of conceptual. What should you know? What you know certain terms like spoliation and whatnot, and how do you respond with your clients in explaining the proper process. It's just essentially like California did recently when their attorneys have to have e-discovery working knowledge when having conversations, or they have to rope in a lit support manager that does. They can't have a conversation around that topic and lead in a different way, put themselves up a lot of liability. But we're also, as you see, Mike, in the middle there, BOTA, Word and Word trainer, excuse me. Those are generic. So we are going into the undergraduate and the commercial sector with this application. Again, it's not a legal problem. And the reason law school students don't know it is because they don't know it at the undergraduate. They don't learn it. So we're about to engage. We have a few early adopters already in place. Very excited about that. But yeah,
Joe,
I mean, when you, yeah.
I'm just sorry. We have a question. I was going to, maybe you could add it in, talking about the cost.
Absolutely. So if it's just a single user, it's the Minnesota State Bar members have a deal in place. I don't know the unless you have it there, they have all different options. They could buy a single module, the whole kit and caboodle. Oh, there you go. So that's the pricing right there. The highest you're going to pay for every module and every trainer is less than $100. It's unlimited use for an entire year, and you hold on to your badging. And then if it is for a firm, let's say you wanted to get it for your paralegals and your associates and whatnot, I strongly suggest that you reach out to me first rather than having everybody buy the single licenses, and I could work on a volume discount for you all, which the State Bar would get accredited for, of course, because we are partners in this, Micah's team and I and the organization. So we don't ever want cost to be kind of a barrier to entry for you all. So if it's firm, it could be it's 5 users and upwards. I start volume discounting at 5 users. So feel free to reach out.
I'll be at the end of this session. I'll tell you how to apply for a free module. I'm giving away 4. We'll just purchase on behalf of the Bar Association. My only ask is that you tell me a little bit about your experience with it. Was it intimidating? Just how you felt about that process. But I'll describe that when we wrap.
Awesome. So hopefully I addressed the pricing. Yeah, and then I don't know if anybody's on the line from the law school, but law school has very unique and strong pricing. I almost look at it as we give it away for law schools because we have commercial, clients and whatnot. The law schools, we're more inclined. We just want volume with them. I mean, we want everybody using it, so they come out into the professional world with at least a small set of basic office technology proficiency.
What do you think the Bar Association might be able to do for our solo small folks to promote the LTA? I'm thinking, the consumers on the solo small market aren't going to recognize the badge, whereas the corporate legal departments might be demanding it. Do you know what other bar associations are doing or other organizations are doing to sort of promote the validity and awareness of the passage of the assessment?
Well, it could go as deep as to the continued technical competency, standards that are continuously rolled out by the ABA and whatnot. It does go as deep as using these tools. To promotion of a better life, better work life, because it really is, particularly if you're a solo practitioner and there is nobody you could call to say, hey, I need this document edited or whatnot. You got to do it, right? And there's a reason sometimes a lot of people are solo practitioners. They like the lifestyle and they like the kind of the fluidity of their day and having the flexibility. So this, these are, man, it's a loaded question. It's just essential skills to have. How they're promoting it. Because everybody, like you said, it's like the commercial clients are asking for the badging or whatnot, but the smaller consumer clients are not. Ethically, they should be.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. Get Your Life Back is an angle that I guess I hadn't honestly, I hadn't thought about. We refer to the tech competence quite often, but that again is just kind of a punitive angle. It's more about making sure that you're competent and not violating the rules, but that's not fun. I think, but we also talk quite a bit about with the Clio Legal Trends report, which I'm sure you're familiar with, which talks quite a bit about how much of the time we're spending on administrative work. And the idea there that what Clio has done is discovered that most attorneys are spending about 2 hours out of an 8-hour day on billable hours. The rest of the hours are spent on administrative tasks. And I don't know whether or not that's the right amount or not the right amount, honestly. But if you can become more efficient and perform these functions without having to go to Google, regularly, or YouTube to find out how it's done, I think that's that's a good angle for us to promote. I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't made the connection.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. I think it goes back to that case study I referenced earlier with Kiesel Young. The fact is that the more proficient associates at the forefront and whatnot they were retaining their revenue. And what's more important than that, right? They weren't having to write off any of the work they did, and they could work on. You could work on stuff. I mean, you become lawyers for generally for your passion for the law, right? And not being able to transcribe that passion because you don't know some basic office technologies that take up so much of your day. There's an easy solution, the LTA, I think, is the most simplistic approach to just correcting it. I mean, I can tell you, if you're an expert in Word, you could get through our module in 10 to 12 minutes. We've seen people hunker down for 4 hours. It's and that in those cases, it's because they simply won't hit skip, and then go learn it and then go back. They just I know this, but. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing about applying for the CLE credit, where we applied for these as on-demand credit hours. Strictly speaking, the rules in Minnesota prohibit self-study, which I think this is, though it's not solely correspondence work or self-study. We expected to be rejected for this as a model, but the other side of this conversation, I think it'd be interesting for the Bar Association to have is, especially now that it's hard to be anywhere in person. I think there's value in this. There's value in competency-based learning, not only to demonstrate for others that you've learned, but to make something like this possible in the Minnesota rules and acceptable to the board of CLE. I think that's an interesting direction to go in.
Yeah. No, I mean, a lot of the states are going towards competency-based learning, right? Florida is one of them. That was our first, Florida and you guys were our first. It's always, we always kind of references to the states that aren't there yet or won't accept it as a competency-based learning approach to CLE is the fact that using time as a proxy. Again, I use that statement a lot, but particularly for CLE, where you have 30 people in a room and 30 of them are on Angry Birds or whatever they're playing, and they're getting credit because they sat in a room for 1.5 hours. What did they learn? How do you validate? It goes all the way back to like that. And why not give them something that's hands-on, or they have to do some type of synopsis afterwards that validates their what they've attained or during that session. So a lot of states are transferring to it. It's great. We are CLE accredited in other states: Florida, Oregon, Texas, Oklahoma, Hawaii, Kentucky, Kansas. Some of them, it's funny. It's like, well, what does that mean? We got the CLE credit, and now it's navigating. Okay, how do we offer it? But it's a nice trend there. It definitely kind of adds value to people, or hopeful people purchasing and doing this, so because they'll know they get the CLE credit, right? It's kind of a carrot at the end of the stick. But
we've had another request for a demo of one of the modules.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. I'm going to actually run through one of the tasks here.
Thanks.
Risk. And so we'll go through the full item. And then for the folks, and I always forget, we always go past 8:30. My apologies, and I always forget to drop the CLE code in at the end of the half hour. It's 306471 for the folks who are just calling in. I'll say it out loud again, 306471. And I will proceed to task. So first I have to download the document. And it's asking me to turn off changes. Now, if I don't know, you saw me, this is the trainer module. So if I didn't know how to do this, I could ask to teach me and it would walk me through. What I like about the videos is that it runs through it twice, actually. I don't know if I get halfway through it. So it'll show it to you once. So I can cheat on the trainer module, right? Super, super simple. All right, so that's the video. I'm going to open up the document.
No, while you're doing that, it's important to note that this is it's operating system agnostic. So although many of you guys use PC, Windows operating systems, this is 100% compatible on Mac because it's web-based. So some smaller firms do use Mac. 65% of law students use Mac, which was it's crazy. But that's another story for another day. So just so you know that, it is browser agnostic. So it doesn't matter what browser you launch on. It's actually software agnostic on the assessment side. We talked about this earlier, Mike. You could be using Google Docs, and as long as you save it as a .x file, it'll work. The caveat there, though, is we don't have any training for Google Docs itself, but if you wanted to use it in the assessment, you could.
All right, so let's see. I've got 3 tasks here. I've got to turn off track changes. We've done that, I think, accept all changes in the document. So I'm going to, I'll bring this over. Track changes I turned off here. Accept all changes and stop tracking. And then delete all comments. Let's see. I actually don't know how to delete all comments. I would have to do that as a, let's see, I'm gonna save this just on my desktop. New task on Word. Go back to the module where I'm gonna get spanked. Let's see. Processing, and I should get a message. Your answer is incorrect. Comments found in the document. So it tells you what you did wrong. I did not go through the process. Now I could have, done this as Joe was saying. It's being timed not only on it's being evaluated not only on whether I did it correctly or not, but also how long it took me to complete the task. So that's essentially the step-by-step, and then obviously with the trainer module here, I can see how I'm supposed to complete each of those tasks.
So Mike, one person asked about the credit code. Just to clarify, the code that we put up and that Mike read for the people who are just listening is the code for today, correct? The code for today's.
That's correct. Yep.
And
Yep.
they asked about, so the LTA code, the codes for the LTA assessment are, Mike had pointed them out on the page, on the MSBA page.
Yeah, sorry for that. That was probably confusing. Yeah, if you take one of those, if you complete one of those modules, Excel, Word, PDF, or the Minnesota e-filing module, each of those were approved for on-demand credit. If you're in Minnesota right now, you can apply all of your credits to on-demand, whereas typically it's only, oh gosh, I'm forgetting, 15, right?
15. Yeah, typically it's 15. I think, I may be wrong, but I think it's, you can use them all if you're reporting this summer, if you're in the group that reports this summer.
And that rule for folks too, just so you know, has been up for debate. The MSBA Assembly considered submitting a rule change, a petition to the Supreme Court to have that rule changed and to permit, for accessibility purposes, no limit on the amount of on-demand credits that you can apply for, which is interesting.
I think that's still with the court. I think that's still being considered. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't remember the status of that. I thought that it was tabled for the time being, but yeah, I think you're right. It might have gone back to that. I don't know. I'm more interested in the self-study and encouraging competency-based learning. I know in the educational community, there's a deeper discussion about that, about how we learn, and we talk sort of about some of the challenges of promoting this, in that sometimes it might feel punitive or wrong-headed even, but it's a challenge to promote, I think, competency-based learning. But I think it's the right thing to do here at the Bar Association, and it's something that's really missing as a component of how we as attorneys learn, I think. So other than, I suppose, the bar exam, which I'm not sure if that qualifies as competency-based learning, but yeah, I think it's part of an ongoing discussion here at the Bar Association, and I encourage folks to send me a message if you want to follow up on that conversation. There's some work in the practice law developers community going on there about what a petition for that might look like. And as I said, folks, go ahead and email me if you're interested. I'm going to drop my contact information in here. If I have more than, sorry, one thing at a time. I'm just going to drop in my contact information, my email address. If you're interested in a free version of one of the modules, giving one of these away for free, I'm giving one of each away for free. Send me an email if you're interested. If I get more than 4 requests, I'll do a little randomizer in Excel and pick from a hat, essentially, the top 4, and those folks will get a free module to the LTA. The presentation is being recorded. We push this through to our live YouTube channel. So if you want to rewatch the presentation, you can do it there to answer Christopher's question. And before we wrap, I'll just want to open it up for any additional questions. Anybody else have any questions about the legal tech assessment, the Board of CLE rules, legal tech generally? Excellent. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Sharon, Joe, thank you so much. This is a great conversation. I love this topic, and thanks for joining us so early in the morning. Joe, I know you have an active family life too, so I'll let you get back to that as we. Sorry, I think I just gave Sharon my, sorry for that.
I put it up there, so.
Okay, thanks. carlsonminbars.org. I'll send over the module for you if you're interested in that. And yeah, all I ask is that you tell me a little bit about your experience so that we can share it with other members. Did it feel punitive? Were you intimidated? Or to Joe's points, did you learn at least one thing that you're now going to use in your daily life? That kind of thing. So yeah, eager to hear from you. Thanks, Joe, for the email. I'm going to drop my phone number as well, just in case people have phone questions. Excellent. Well, with that, I should, we are past the half hour by several minutes. Thanks, Al, for joining us. Next week, we'll be talking about web development. Right now, a lot of our members are taking this downtime to the extent they have it to rebuild their websites. And I'm getting a ton of questions about how to find a web developer or build a website. So we'll be talking to Guy Tsakalakis, if I pronounced that name correctly. Joe, you probably know that name. I think I have that right. But he specializes in SEO and web design for attorneys. We'll be talking to him next week at bright and early at 7:30 as well. So I hope you'll all join us then. With that, I will say adieu. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.